There are four key times in the life of every person. Two of those we cannot control. Those are the times we are born and the times when we die. We don't decide when we're born or when we die. But there are two other moments we do decide. The time when we give our lives to God and the time we give ourselves to someone else at the time of marriage. Those moments are key to a person's happiness. I will tell you 10 words which are specifically connected to marriage. Those 10 words are going to have a noticeable influence on the happiness or the unhappiness of your marriage. The first word we must understand in the context of marriage and to be happy within it is the word covenant. What is a covenant and what does it mean? A covenant is an agreement between two people, but when we get married, that agreement is special because it is made before God Himself. Most people, when they're in the process of a wedding, are involved in a lot of details, but they forget the fundamental aspect, which is the fact that the ceremony is a meeting with God where they will promise to make each other happy, to love one another. Love is the decision of giving ourselves for the happiness of the other individual. This means then that this covenant should rule over the entire essence of the relationship for the rest of their lives. It is not only during the wedding, but during the entire marriage where I decide each day to make the other person happy. So marriage is a commitment and a responsibility before God. And as long as we are clear about this covenant, happiness is guaranteed. The second word towards the happiness of a relationship is the word independence. Independence from whom? From what? It is independence from each other's families. Why? Someone, maybe a mother-in-law or a father-in-law, may be questioning what I'm starting to say right now. But in the Bible, humanity's first couple received two specific commandments. First, do not eat from the tree of good and evil, otherwise, that day they would begin to die. The second one, men shall leave mother and father and become one with their spouse. If we don't adjust our roles as sons and daughters, it will be very hard to become lovers to our spouse. I have helped many couples who've had to face physical and emotional problems because either one or both were not able to break those ties with their birth families. This doesn't mean we don't owe respect, love, and care for our parents. But it does mean that parents need to have a clear boundary toward the new relationship. The members of the marriage need to establish clearly what those boundaries will be, both the wife to her family as well as the husband to his family. If God said there must be a good reason why there needs to be the separation, may you have the courage to be able to decide to no longer be a child in order to be fully a spouse. The next word is the word time. Time is vital to a couple's process of getting to know each other and recognizing each other in order to overcome the obstacles life will present. And I'm talking about quality time. Time walking together, going out together, interacting, sharing meals, talking to each other, to deliberately employ the time being together. There's a reason why God asks us to give Him some of our time. Because for God, it is impossible to build a relationship without spending time together. And so it is for couples. Without time together, it will be impossible to grow the relationship. So don't forget, time, quality time. Another key word in a marriage is the word money. And you may laugh and think I'm saying that money is necessary to find happiness. But that's not what I'm referring to. But whether we have much or little of it, it's about how we go about managing our money. Many studies show that when marriages are in crisis, both their finances and their sexuality are affected. Not that this is always the main reason for the crisis, but that it is where the crisis expresses itself. This is why this is an area we need to know how to manage wisely. The first thing is to give back to God what belongs to Him. When God is in the first place of our marriage, He will also be in the first place of our money. The second is to adapt ourselves to our income. When we acquire too many debts, or we overreach beyond our income, sooner or later, this will bring a crisis. It is vital to make some basic agreements as husband and wife regarding the management of money, and that both are involved in that management. Either one being left out of the equation will sooner or later create problems in the marriage. May you, with the help of God and with your spouse, place wisdom in the management of your finances, because that will also contribute to your happiness. Another word that has to do with the happiness of the marriage is the word intimacy. You may be assuming by the word intimacy that this will be something sexual, but I'm not referring to sexuality in this case. Sexuality can be a part of intimacy, but intimacy goes much further. When we talk about intimacy, we're referring to focused attention. In order to have a solid marriage, you will need to have your attention focused on your husband or your wife. There can't be anything that consumes more mental energy than your husband or wife. Any other situation or person that draws your attention away from your husband or wife can be dangerous. It should be like a yellow traffic light that serves as a warning. If your job has become more important than your spouse, there is a problem. If the church is more important than your husband or wife, there is a problem. If your children are more important than your husband or your wife, there is a problem. And if a particular person is more important to you than your husband or wife, this means your marriage is collapsing. The Bible is clear about this. It suggests that when we place our energy in something outside of our marriage, it will consume us and move us closer towards death. But it says that when we focus on the loved one of our youth, it will bring us recreation, renewed strength to be able to engage all other aspects of life. Therefore, in order to be happy in your marriage, place all your attention in that one person you decided to love. The next word is the word conflict. How can it be that for a marriage to be happy, there needs to be conflict? I'm not referring to intentionally or deliberately provoking conflict, but natural conflict, which are the logical results of a process of adjustment between two people who've had two different life stories, who come from different families, and who are seeking a process of unification. This will inevitably generate conflict. But in order to understand conflicts and in order to resolve them, there are a few things you should never forget. May the sun never set while you are angry. And secondly, remember that before going to bed, the most sacred place for a marriage, you must have resolved your conflict, or at least have talked about the situation in pursuit of a compromise. The Bible says that God cannot listen to those who do not resolve their conflicts. But conflict is natural. It is a part of married life. So the fact that you may have conflict does not mean you have a problem-filled marriage. It is a marriage overcoming problems in order to be happy. The issue is when and how do I resolve conflict? And never forget that forgiveness must always be present, because where there is love, there is forgiveness. And forgiveness is not to claim entitlement so that we may be able to save the relationship. From the word conflict arises a question, which is, what does a couple do when their conflict overcomes them? What does a couple do when they cannot resolve their conflicts? Evidently, they need help. The next word is help. It's fundamental that we both may have an open communication with God, individually and as a couple. Sooner or later, God will empower you to regain control over the situation. We must also keep in mind that we can't cease communication without one another, and we cannot stop our desire to find a solution for the conflict at hand. If we are experiencing conflict, we should not seek rescue with our birth families. I should never share with my parents, siblings, family members, the detailed issues I may be facing with my spouse. I can mention in a general sense that we're facing difficult times. The fact is that we may end up forgiving, and yet at that point, our family members may find it hard to forgive them themselves. When we have the appropriate help, at the appropriate time, to overcome the natural conflicts of a relationship, the result of two different people finding ways to compromise will always move the relationship forward. There will always be growth, emotional and spiritual growth, as well as the growth of the relationship itself. Above all this, our relationship will be stronger as a result. These are good reasons to never refuse or keep from seeking help when conflict is about to overcome us. One of the words that have a direct connection with marriage is the word sex. Sex. According to the experts, the word sex is one of the 14 words that generate the strongest impact in the minds of people as they hear it. But the majority of people disassociate the word sex from the marital experience due to the stereotype that sex becomes boring during marriage. There are limitless jokes about the idea that the more committed the marriage, the less sex there is within it. This is not God's plan. God created sexuality with the intention of it providing the greatest amount of marital bliss. There cannot be sexual happiness if the couple does not know each other well, if there is no intimacy, if the relationship is not based on a pact or a covenant. And God created sex to provide happiness to the marriage. Sexuality never fails within the context of marriage. The failure comes from the individuals within the relationship. The Apostle Paul says that when we are married, our bodies are no longer belonging to us, but to our spouses. This is why he says we cannot deny sexual intimacy from our spouse, except, he says, if it is to spend time in prayer, and this time should not be long. The Bible promotes sexual intimacy. The Bible promotes that we enjoy whole physical connections, but guided by love. I don't own my wife's body for the benefit of my own instincts, but to make her physically happy. This is what love is, a decision of surrounding ourselves to pursue making the other person happy. This is why there is no exploiting when both God and love are present. I have ownership over my spouse, not to exploit them, but to make them happy. Therefore, sexuality is a sort of a divine seal over a committed relationship. God is the creator of sexuality with the intention that you may enjoy it within the context of marriage. It is a gift from heaven for a sexual experience built upon love. Another word to understand marriage is the word children. Usually children will come sooner or later to a marriage. And we need to be prepared to be parents, but also prepared to not abandon our roles as husband and wife and lovers. This is still our first priority. It comes first because our children need to see us as a strong unit. This can become a source of a sense of stability for our children. The Bible also says that we should never provoke the anger of our children. How do we provoke a child? This happens when we fail to meet their basic needs, and their needs begin with the need of love. Secondly, depending on the age and personality of our children, we can't always behave the same way with all of them. It is not the same thing to raise a girl than it is to raise a boy. It's not the same thing to deal with a 1-year-old as it is to deal with a 7-year-old. We need to be able to adapt to their specific need. If we can't find a way to meet their needs, they will live with a sense of insecurity, and that will ultimately turn out to become a source of unhappiness to us. If God is in the center of the family, if God is present in all the aspects of the home, children will grow safely, knowing there is something greater than them that is watching out for the entire family. May you be able to be a good parent without ever ceasing to be a great spouse. The final word dealing with marriage is the word religion. It may make sense that I'm explaining this word from behind a pulpit, an ideal place for anyone to associate the word religion with God. But what is religion? Religion is the relationship of the husband with God. It is the relationship of the wife with God. And there also has to be a relationship of both spouses together with God. I continue to claim that if God is placed first in the home, nothing can threaten a marriage. If God is taken out of that place and there is no direct relationship with Him, then anything can destroy a marriage. What is the relationship with the church? The church is important because it is a community of believers who strengthen our religious process. But the relationship with God is the first and key element. From there, everything we do at church makes sense. Then it is vital for the health of our marriage that God may have His due place in our relationship, and that we may also enjoy fellowship with those believers who compose the church, because they too will help us in our journey of growth with God. It is important for a couple to have fellowship, but above all, it is the relationship with God that matters most. If you've been watching this video, then you're between two of those 4 important moments in life. You've been born and you're not dead yet, but maybe you still haven't made a decision about the 2 fundamental times that contribute to the happiness of an individual. Maybe you still have not surrendered your life to God through a daily relationship and a journey of interaction and intimacy with Him. This may be the time for you to do so. This will also lead you to the decision of investing and working on your marriage. in the 10 key words I have mentioned to you today. May these 10 words be a guide toward your happiness.